Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Rachel Burnett, Deputy Commissioner here at Children's Services Division, Department of Family and Support Services. And with me, I have.
Hi, everyone. Michael Abello, Chief of Early Childhood Education for Chicago Public Schools.
Hi. We wanted to be here with you today just to, as we talk about our work together, collaborating, and talking about Chicago early learning, we wanted to draw you into our conversation a little bit, just so that you know and understand the kinds of things that between us, meaning Department of Family and Support Services and Chicago Public Schools, the kinds of things that we're talking about. So we just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to do that today. And hopefully we will be able to share information that will help you understand some of the direction that we're going and some of the things we're thinking about. So thanks again for spending a little bit of time and actually reviewing the webinar that we've presented for you today.
Yeah, I also would just like to start by saying thank you to everybody for the invitation to join, to Rachel and the rest of the DSSS team. The reality is, at CPS, when thinking about this work, we view this work as a partnership, that this work is not done in isolation. When we talk about servicing our earliest learners, that is not something that we do at CPS or that you do in your community-based organizations, but it's a collaborative effort to get the job done. And so the opportunity to be here with you is truly special, and I look forward to the continued partnership.
Great, thanks, Michael. And so one of the things I wanted us to do today is make sure that we spend a little time talking about some of what you and I talked about and ways that we can work together, some of the work we've already done, so talking a little bit about some of those points, but then really going into some of the things that we were thinking about as far as principals and CBOs and community. So if we can go ahead and just start off by talking about some of the work that we've already done. And I know we've spent a lot of time in meetings, Michael.
Yes.
It's been great. I know you've been on board a short period of time, but we've seen each other a lot in meetings and just talking about Chicago early learning, talking about data, looking and trying to figure out what are we talking about when we start talking about the community as a whole. And so having had you come on board, which is really great, and I just want to point that out because I want people to understand some of your background as well, because you've also been a teacher in a classroom. So, you know, you touch the system in varying ways from your own personal experience and the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, so I actually got my start as a preschool teacher at a child parent center on the south side of the city. And for the last 5 years, I've actually been a principal on the west side of Chicago. And I think having those perspectives coming into this role are extremely valuable. And I think part of the excitement and interest that I have coming into this position is really beyond Chicago Public Schools. It's really about how we're providing access to all early learners across the city of Chicago, how we're providing quality early learning opportunities for students and families. And I think the other element of the work is partnership. Partnership in every sense of the term. Partnership with families, partnership with other agencies, partnership with each other. I think one of the things that I am really excited about that Rachel and I have had a chance to talk about briefly is not only our partnership in terms of leadership within agencies, but how that partnership is trickling down to the school and community-based organization level. The reality is our partnership, while it can be strong, and that's a very important partnership, that partnership is only going to be truly valuable if that is meaning something to individual schools and community-based organizations. I think part of my excitement coming into this role, and when I think about where I'd like our Chicago Public Schools to be, I'd like them to be able to say who all the community-based organizations are around their school. I'd like them to be able to say that our efforts to service early learners is a mixed delivery model. It's not a Chicago Public School effort. It's not a CBO effort, but it is truly a shared effort, and that this is a partnership. And as such, we should know who our partners are that help us achieve this access to early learning across the city.
Great. Thanks, Michael, because, that's one of the things that we wanted across Chicago, and it's to build that communication, collaboration, and partnership that extends itself into community where principals understand who's around the corner from them, because at the end of the day, as you and I both have talked about, we're all serving the same families, and we want to make sure that we're wrapping our hands around the entire family. And in order to do that, we need to be in communication with each other. Principals need to know who the leaders are of those organizations that are providing services in their community, what their operating hours are, for example. If a mom walks into a school and is talking about the need for additional services, we want staff there to be able to talk about what else exists in the community, and we want our CBOs to be able to do the exact same thing. That's when it's real partnership. And, you know, and your point earlier, and I just want to expound on that one too, it's you and I can have the greatest collaboration. We can partner, do all of this work, but if it doesn't get down to those that are doing the service on the ground, then we really haven't finished the job. And that's the message that we want to send today. It's really, that's our goal, is to make sure that all of what we're talking about gets down to our CBOs, gets down to our schools. And that's the work that we are agreeing to do going forward, is to develop systems and opportunities to make sure those kinds of things happen.
Yeah, if I can add, I think it's also really important for our community-based leaders to also understand that we at CPS know that we have a long way to go in that effort. The simple reality is that, if you're a principal at a school, chances are you don't know who all the CBOs are. Chances are you don't know that that this is not. I think historically there has been this sense of competition, and while some of that might be inevitable, the goal is that we're trying to service all learners, and most importantly, those who are currently not being served. That's the goal in our effort, and we are partners in that work. And so part of my priority, and I think part of the work that we're engaging in at CPS, is to think about what knowledge and information and skill do principals need to have, to service those early learning classrooms in their building, but B, how are we supporting them in their efforts to understand that this is a mixed delivery model, to understand the value of these partnerships, to understand that if you have strong relationships with your community-based partners, it will strengthen not only your program, but ultimately the entire community. And so I think it's important to understand that there is a vision here, and that the goal is to improve on these collaborative opportunities, but that there is a long way to go, and we're excited about taking that on.
Yeah, and acknowledging, you know, to Michael's point, all great work starts somewhere, and the message we're sending today, and that's why we even call this time together our collaborative message, is to make sure that people understand that we're at the table, we're talking, we're collaborating, and thinking through what we understand is something that's going to take time. It's not going to be, you know, something that we're going to be able to roll out in the next day or so. But if we don't start the conversation, then it never happens. And so I'm really, you know, happy that we're here today, you know, and wanting to make sure that you get the message that that's the door that we've opened of the work that we know will take some steps, but the acknowledgement that we're willing and wanting to do this, I think, takes us a little bit further down the road than perhaps we would have been. And so, you know, I thank Michael for his willingness to be here at DFSS so that we can send this message, but also the work that we're planning to do, and the time that we'll spend together making sure that we're able to get this, not just from conversation, but into real working community.
Yep, absolutely. I think and one of the things that we know here is that communication is going to be key. Communication with all of our constituencies is going to be key. Communication with families, communication with each other, communication to our schools, communication with you. And so that's going to be centered around our ongoing efforts. That you know, a true partnership and collaboration is going to have to be built around strong systems of communication. And I think that from our vantage point, I think I'm excited about our ability to do so far. But again, it's important that communication trickles down to you in your organization.
And so for us, some of our next steps, of course, is to continue these dialogues and to work this out. Michael will spend time, of course, with principals and talking about how to make some of this work. And we'll be doing the same thing with you, our CBOs, at EDPD meetings and other ways that we'll be communicating with you, is to talk through ways and ideas around how we can then bring that information back up. Michael and I then partnering and working together to make sure that we're trying to implement these systems of communication that goes and extends itself out into community.
Absolutely. And I think the only other thing that I wanted to share is I understand that changes within CPS ultimately affect our CBO partners, and we are very well aware of that. And I think part of what I want you guys to understand as leaders of various organizations is to know that that in anything that we do within CPS, especially in the Office of Early Childhood, we're taking into consideration and thinking about whatever the effects might be with our CBO partners. Because the reality is, I mentioned this already, this mixed delivery model requires both of our agencies, and it's essential that we are taking into account what the needs are for each of our organizations as we're thinking about any potential initiatives or changes down the road.
Exactly. And again, and I'll express it as well. And it's a reminder, and I know I've said it to the CBO community before, but everything that we're building in Chicago Early Learning, as Michael just stated, includes all of you. We cannot do this work without our CBO community. And everything that we're building, discussing, talking about, is with all of you framed number one in that discussion, because we know that all of our slots, again, reminder, and I say this all the time, we have no directly operated sites through Department of Family and Support Services. All of our work is done in community and through all of you. And your value add number one in all of the work that we do. And we know no matter what we do in Chicago Early Learning and across the city, it cannot happen without our CBO community. Mm-hmm. And we want everybody to understand that we understand that and we acknowledge that between ourselves and in the work that we're doing.
Yep, and I think to that point, that it's important that we understand that if we're talking about expanding on the number of preschool opportunities within CPS, that we're mindful about again the impact that could have, how we're thinking through that impact, ensuring that our principals, and hopefully you all know that it's not about pulling seats away, but truly servicing those who currently aren't actually in preschool, and that's a priority for us. And while this mixed delivery model will have those minor effects, it's truly important that we understand what that looks like. And again, it boils down to communication as well. I think a request that we've heard from DFSS and from some community-based partners is to understand if we are increasing the number of preschool opportunities within CPS, how are we getting that information to you all in a timely way? And I think that's something that we can commit to, and something that I think is really important on our end to really fully think through, how we're getting this information to all of those who are involved.
Correct. Thank you for that, Michael. And again, to the questions that we have, and you just spoke to that, it's getting that communication out there. And so what I want to share is we are going back to doing meetings every other week. And I know you had December off, and we intended to have you face-to-face with us today, but weren't able to because of weather and extreme weather. We didn't want you braving the weather to be out here as we have today. So that's why we're taping this webinar. But we do want to let you know that we will be with you, and we'll be setting up meetings going forward. Our next EDPD meeting we have scheduled right now is for Thursday of next week on February 7th. And we will be back at the UIC Student Center where we were at our last meeting. And so we're going to be looking at doing them every 2 weeks. But the other thing we've already talked about is also doing webinars in the middle, because we know there's a lot of varying communication points and information that we need to share with the community, and we want to make sure that we have opened up the door to do that. And so again, we'll be doing it through face-to-face, but we will also be doing it through webinar. So this won't be the only one you'll get. Actually, this will be the first one for 2019 with many more to come. So keep your eye out for CSD Update. The links that, as always, will be there for you, letting you know that there's a new webinar for you to view. But also, of course, they are also going to go over and be a part of our YouTube channel as well. So just want to make sure everybody understands how to keep up with what's going on and all the messages that we're going to be giving. The last thing I do want to do, and I'll turn it back over to Michael in a moment if he has other points he wants to share, is to let you know that there's a second half to the webinar that we're sharing with you today. Tiffany Junkins, who's our manager here, and also Christy Chadwick with the Mayor's Office are going to be together doing a portion of a webinar where they're going to be talking data, and they're going to be talking about looking at what we've already put together as far as how we're looking at community across the city of Chicago, Chicago Early Learning, looking at 4-year-olds, looking at 0 to 3. There's a document that's been out there. They're going to actually walk through it. So we want to make sure that as you're looking at us and enjoying our message, that you don't turn off that webinar today, that you stay tuned, and so that you can get an update on data, and you'll get a chance to walk through with them a document that talks about where we've looked at information, data and information that talks about where children are in community, to Michael's point, because this really is being built around serving children that are currently not being served in Chicago, and us making sure that we've thought about expanding opportunities to make sure that we have that possibility for families in program year 1920.
Yeah. And just a final thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today, and a big thank you to Sir Ethel and the rest of the DFSS team. I just really am looking forward to the collaborative efforts ahead. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, everyone, for spending a few moments with us, and we'll see you soon. Again, we will be at the UIC Student Center on February 7th, and we hope every one of you will be there in audience so that you can hear the next pieces of our information as we continue to share and make sure the messages are getting out into community. So thanks for spending time with us, and we hope you're staying warm.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.